This is Jay Michaels. Now, I want you to put an image in your head of a Yale University graduate who majored in Chinese studies and who went to school, that is, with George W. Bush, and subsequently was a pathfinder for the Peace Corps. You have that one image in your head? Okay, good. Now, imagine a filmmaker who is integral in the creation of Rocky and Saturday Night Fever. Do you have that other image in your head? Excellent. Now, think about the mastermind behind the iconic Troma Studios, the Toxic Avenger, and Class of Nukem High. You have that image in your head? They're all three the same person. I am utterly thrilled. And I was utterly thrilled before I found out some of these details. Now I'm even more thrilled and quite intimidated to meet Lloyd Kaufman. Mr. Kaufman, it is a pleasure to meet you. I'm really thrilled to meet you.
That's the best introduction. Most people say, and now the world's oldest teenager.
You know, that's pretty good too.
It's pretty good.
I'm going to add that to the next time I say it. I had so many questions that I was going to ask, obviously about Troma and the brilliance that you've done with those. I was going to segue into a movie called Horror House that I saw before I knew what you looked like. Obviously, I knew your name, but I didn't know what you looked like. And I remember seeing the movie, and you were this real estate agent who was introduced in this anthology of 5 horror stories. And I remember thinking, oh, it's a good movie, but this guy's really brilliant. Where did they get him from? And boom, there you are. I was going to talk about that. And then when I saw your backstory, if you will, I'm even more impressed. And you also seem to have an affinity for Shakespeare in a great way. Tell us about Lloyd Kaufman. Tell us about you, your journey, and how you got here.
How I got here? Here? Well, I didn't set out in life to make movies. I was a theater buff. Since I live in New York, I love musicals and all that stuff. Being a gay married man, I've wept through every Barbra Streisand show of Judy Garland. But I went to Yale, and by Kismet, that's a musical. By Kismet, I was placed in a room with the guy who ran the Yale Film Society, very small bedroom. Our beds were head to toe, and at night I'd inhale his Godard stinking feet, and slowly the aroma du Troma was born. I would drift into the Film Society auditorium and watch the movies that my roommate would present, which were primarily auteur films. Ford, Hawks, Samuel Fuller. This is in the 60s. Chaplin, Keaton, Mizoguchi, Leni Riefenstahl, Fritz Lang, you name, the auteurs. And they had a pile of Cahiers de Cinema magazines, which are the magazine of the French Cinematheque. And being a typical bourgeois, I can speak fluent French, so I started reading through those and kind of got brainwashed by the Cahiers de Cinema. And then one night, my senior year at Yale, I took acid. I was by myself and decided between 2 jobs, one in the City of Angels and one shitty little company in New York called Canon. And I decided I would stay in New York and work at the crappy little company and become an auteur, as we say.
Okay.
I've written a book, by the way. There's a beautiful montage, a beautiful, memoir. All I need to know about filmmaking, I learned from the Toxic Avenger, put out by Putnam. And James Gunn wrote the first book that I wrote, and then he went on to write Romeo and Juliet, and I think he made a movie, something to do with Guardians and suicide. I'm not sure what happened to him after that, but I hear he's doing okay.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had these great auteurs as your foundation, as your learning.
Yes.
So now I see how you went from Chinese studies all the way to films. Your films It's easy to sit there and say, oh, they're wild, they're crazy, they're whatever. But there's something about them. There's a sense of surrealism. So now I see where that comes from, especially considering this foundation. What made you choose these topics? How did you create things like the Toxic Avenger? Where did these ideas form within you?
Well, my grandmother, Grammy Kaufman, was a very left. Well, she was definitely a socialist, and she would rant about McCarthy and the blacklist, and she introduced me to many of the. She would have the civil rights workers once they got beaten up down south. They'd stay with her and recuperate. And she gave them some money and antiques, and she kind of brainwashed me when I was very young. And I remember going to school in sixth grade, suggesting, or maybe it was eighth grade, suggesting that the Vietnam War was actually an awful war, and that Castro had done a good thing by kicking out the dictator and the hookers and the croupier. And I like that he kicked out the hookers, but I mean, I like that he kicked out the dictator, but I would prefer the hookers stay. Anyway, so I have sort of a grandmother who filled me up with a lot of kind of sharing in the actions and passions of my time. And she also gave me a book called The Power Elite by Scott Nearing, who was a professor at University of Pennsylvania, and I think Columbia, and he got kicked. He of course got blacklisted. And it's it basically deals with the military and you know, the thing Eisenhower talked about, military industrial elite, and I sort of enlarged that to a triplet of the corporate elite, the bureaucratic elite, and the labor elite. I don't think the military elite is quite as powerful anymore in terms of screwing up our lives. So so that's that basic idea, that the little people of Tromaville are perfectly able to run their own lives without limousine liberals telling them how to live or whatever, and that they need sometimes they need help to get out of their issues because of the labor, bureaucratic, and corporate elite who suck dry the little people of their economic and spiritual capital. So early movies dealt with the women's liberation movement, Squeeze Play, which was a raunchy, hilarious, raunchy comedy that actually got a good review in the New York Times. But it was all about women's rights and the ERA, and yet it had plenty of. It came out before Porky's, so it had that kind of atmosphere. And then every film has a pretty serious subtext. The Toxic Avenger is all about the environment, and well before Al Gore even thought about it or had a jet plane that consumed more toxic waste than the entire city of New York. So the Toxic Avenger was kind of environmental, and the idea is to aim it at younger people who might actually be flexible enough to think about it. You know, a perfect example is we made a movie called Poultrygeist. It's an anti-fast food movie. Now, Fast Food Nation, I read it. It's excellent, but it's aimed at people like me, you know, older people. Sure. And the movie didn't make any converts. In fact, the movie wasn't even any good as far as I'm concerned. So Poultrygeist is aimed at young people who might be able to change the world. And it has many all of my films have underdogs in them. And I think a lot of the I think a lot of the younger people, the Gen X and the other one, the millenniums, and many of them consider themselves underdogs. And why not? The limousine liberals and baby boomers have pretty much smothered the next generation. That's what Romeo and Juliet was all about the subversion of how love can be subversive, how love can fight against rules that are there for no reason at all except to help the elites.
It's ironic. The ending of Romeo and Juliet gives that sort of message. It's almost fairy tale. I won't give it away for the two people listening that haven't seen that movie yet.
Well,
But,
thank you.
but when you really think about it, yes, it's a fairy tale ending. But in listening to you now, yes, of course, it's the love conquers all sort of irony.
Yeah, the idea that my generation has smothered the next generation, and that's why they're tattooing themselves and autoeroticism, and they've turned inward because my generation is totally, the Clintons with the oh so cool, everything has to be so cool, and they've totally my generation has a 50% divorce rate at least, and so they've sort of screwed things up. So the younger generation turns inward, and there you go, Romeo and Juliet. The young couple breaking the rules that they don't know why they're following the rules. And I may have to go and answer this door. Hold on a second. I can walk with you while I do it.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's the joy of technology,
Yeah, I'm getting it. I'm on a very important Zoom, but I will get it. I know, I'm getting it. My wife was a film commissioner, so it's not enough that I'm getting the door, but I'm getting it.
It's how you're getting it. That's what's important.
Hello, hold on. Sorry, Jay.
That's okay. That's totally okay.
Here's what it was. And while we're here, I'll show you something kind of cute. We live in New York. And my wife decorated the house with these beautiful hearts.
You're all set for Valentine's Day.
Looking above and and looking above, can you see above here? Can you see who's watching over and making sure that hashtag truth and love stay strong?
Oh my
Good
gosh,
old
that's
Toxic.
great. Oh, it's so sweet. It's really so sweet that you celebrate Valentine's Day. You put up the hearts. I think that's really nice. Actually, it goes exactly with what we were saying, about love conquering all. I think that's great.
Sorry, this package that was just delivered weighs a ton. I'm trying to kick it into the. It's probably full of COVID, but I'm bringing it in.
I get that all the time. It's like someone's leaving babies at our doorstep.
Oh, you want to? Should I show the Zoom? Why? Should I come up? You could have been more fast. Oh, I'm very sorry. Do you want me to look? No. Did you not see? Oh! My wife is. We were all alone here, and she's nice. She was the New York State Film Commissioner.
That's right. I read that. Yes.
Appointed by Republican and Democratic governors.
Oh, that's
and
great.
She was mopping the bathroom because we can't allow anybody in the house. Our housekeeper has. We're too old and frail.
Tis the time. Tis the time.
And when I get off this, I'm sure I'm going to hear it from the little woman.
There you go. You'll have to take care of the furniture when you're done.
I apologize in public to Pat Swinney Kaufman. We call
Not a problem at all. It was a great tour. So we see the hearts and flowers, and we see you just like the rest of us.
Yes.
You've answered a big question. You're blowing my mind because you answered a big question. I look at your films and I see this world. It's not just people in an area. You've created this entire world. So this is a world that feels so shut out that it's creating its own universe.
Well, that is a great perception. And oopsie. Whoa, sorry.
I used to use those things and they'd fall out of my head. I'd have to do interviews like this. So I'd rather keep the big old monsters.
Yeah, I should get those. Yeah. I asked my assistant about 9 months ago to get me a set with a microphone. And of course, being Troma, he got and he did, usually we do the cheapest possible set. Which is not, that's what they're supposed to do. We have no money. At any rate, it's a good observation because when I got out of Yale, one of the few things I learned at Yale besides drugs and was comic books. I didn't really read comic books except as a kid. And And I didn't read. I only read Scrooge McDuck. I did. Wasn't allowed them. Oliver Stone had classic comic books, and he had a big set of those. I'd read those, and they became very useful when we had to do book reports.
I have a
But
massive set of Classics Illustrated. I know exactly what you're talking about.
yay, yeah, they were good. They ought to bring them back. At any rate, I searched out. I had the guy next door to me, who, by the way, was the son of Vincent Sherman, who's made a number of very good movies in Hollywood until he got blacklisted or
Right, right.
graylisted and couldn't work. His book is great too. It's called Studio Affairs, and it talks about it. He wrote it after his wife pooped, and it talks all about the affairs he had
Oh
with
my
the
God.
movie stars like Joan Crawford, and he was a woman's director. At any rate, where was I? I'm sorry, I digress.
Your work reminded
Stan
me of
Lee, that
John.
was it. Marvel Comics. The guy next door had a big stack of Marvel Comics, and I started reading them, and was blown away by the art and the amusing titles and the alliterative, like Super Spidey or he loved alliteration.
Oh, sure.
And I searched out Stan Lee in 1970, and he was not Stan Lee then. He was known, but he was working in New York at magazine management, and we hit it off right away. And he gave me a 1/4-inch tape with a story that he thought might be. It was part of a story, and that he thought maybe we could write a script. So I wrote the script up called Night of the Witch, and we were friends for 50 years. And his wife and we went out a lot. He moved to California, and
Sure.
my wife and I would spend a fair amount of time with him. And he's in about 8 of my movies too. He's in Return to Newcomb High and Return to Newcomb High, and he's in about 8 of our films.
Of course he would be. Of course he would be.
I think we dedicated hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm to him, Terry Jones, and John G. Avildsen.
I'm now starting to see the equation that is Lloyd Kaufman, from the auteurs, your grandmother's teaching, Marvel Comics. They all come together. So of course you've created your own universe.
Yep, big influence. Stan was a huge influence.
Oh
His favorite movie of ours was Sergeant Kabuki Man, NYPD, in which he does not appear. And he tried to get. He had Jim Carrey or somebody on the line for a while, but nothing happened. Of course.
Oh, pity. Oh, that would have been a team.
Yeah, it would have been really cool.
Oh, sure. Your work in a way reminded me of John Waters. Just let's put a few extra batteries in that machine. And I always wondered. I thought, okay, what's the story behind these wild sequences? And there it is. It's this combination. Now you said about the Gen Xers and the millennials. Do they get the message? Do you have young people that come to you and say, I figured it out. The movie's about this and we got this.
Oh yeah. No, our fans are the only reason we're still here, Jay, after 47 years is the fans. We are fan fueled. We've got 3 generations of very devoted fans. It's a cult movie studio. It's a classic cult movie studio. We probably have 1 million individuals from at least 3 generations who visit our various sites and the online store and Troma Now streaming channel and Facebook, our social platforms. So they're not, for the most part, our fans are quite wise, and it's not. I don't think they're rich, based on based on our sales, but they're great, and they get my movies into movie theaters in their neighborhoods. They act and shoot and help produce our movies. One of them gave us about 20% of the budget of hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm purely as a patron of the arts. A company called Bad Dragon, a very good company, Bad Dragon, and they didn't even ask for anything. I would have been happy to give them a piece of the film, but they know I'm not going to make any money probably. So
Well, there's the great irony. My mother, who wanted me to be a doctor, reminded me of it for years. That art doesn't necessarily make money. That if it's
no,
real art, it's not going to make too much money.
that's what
Um,
people don't understand, I think.
but it's real art, and so it touches us completely, as your movies have. I think that's, oh my gosh. Okay, this is all making
Well,
such total
that's
sense now.
the auteur thing. It's you have to come. The film should reflect the brain, soul, and heart of the artist.
Right.
Just the word auteur is what they're talking about. And I
And
bought into it. I bought into it.
and they're all such a piece of the time also. As much as they're a world set aside, you can really feel the angst of what's going on in the world when you look at Troma's movies.
Well, thanks. That's thanks for the angst. That's very true. I mean, we're getting bookings on Toxic Avenger. Drive-ins are popular again,
Oh yeah.
thanks to cousin COVID. And here's Toxic Avenger. People call theaters don't never call us. Suddenly, the theaters are calling because there's a wave of nostalgia. But also, Toxie is probably better known than any of the ingenues, or at least 90% of the ingenues introduced in 1983, and we didn't have a penny to advertise. And the studios, of course, had huge budgets for publicity. So we do have the word of mouth. The fans and word of mouth work to our advantage.
Well, that's it. The buzz is everything.
It takes time. The buzz takes time, though. Combat Shock, which is the darkest movie you'll ever see. I didn't direct it. Buddy Giovinazzo directed it. It took about 15 years to break even, but it's a masterpiece. And my film Terra Firma, which is actually about the issues of making independent film, and I play a blind director before Woody Allen, of course. And nobody, people didn't get it. They were like disgusted. And now when we put out the Blu-ray, we have to keep making new ones. It's very profitable suddenly.
People have to get hurt. I've always found that if people have to have their own trauma in order to look at someone else's trauma and relate to it. Everyone talks about, oh, I care about the environment. I care. No, they don't, until it hits them. When it hits them, suddenly their mind is opened. So yes, of
That's a
course.
good point. Yeah, yeah. Well, our Michael Hers, my misanthropic partner, he came up with the movies of the future, which was our slogan for about 45 years. And then he changed it to Troma, 46 years of disrupting the media, or
Yes.
disrupting media.
Yes.
So that's our slogan currently. Although we're so deep in the underground, I don't know how much disrupting we're doing.
Oh, I think you're doing plenty, and I think you're
I
doing
hope
an
so.
excellent job. It's funny because you could even look, I could see people wanting the Toxic Avenger these days, because it could be a parable for what we're going through. Here's someone who is deteriorating. Okay, yes, that's one kind in the movie, but if you
Yeah,
look at
no,
it from a parable, of course,
they're all timeless. The movies I make are timely, but also timeless.
right.
And the proof is that they're still being booked and bought and traded and collected. And in fact, Hollywood's remaking the Toxic Avenger, legendary films with
I read that.
with Peter Dinklage playing the Toxic Avenger.
Oh
So I
my
can't wait for
God.
that. If that
Oh,
happens.
that's great. Oh my, I'm just seeing it in my head now. Oh my gosh.
They got a
Uh,
great director too, Macon Blair, who has only directed one movie, but it's terrific, and he knows Troma better than I do, and he wrote a script that's better than the original Toxic Avenger. So if they actually start the cameras rolling, could be. I think it's going to be very, very good.
oh, it's going to be excellent. Of course it would. Of course it would.
Well, there've been plenty of remakes who ain't so good.
Well, eventually everyone's going to put them all together and say, when you look at all of these together like this, it forms this image. It's going to be analyzed for decades, if not centuries to come. And on that note, we have two Shakespeares that have come out of Troma. Are you a Shakespeare fan also?
Yes, very much so. I can't say I'm an expert, but I certainly know more than the gang who made Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. I put Romeo and Juliet up against that any day. In fact, the Museum of Modern Art had a week of, I think it was called Breaking Bard, and they had three Romeo and Juliet films: Zeffirelli, uh, Baz Luhrmann, and then, well, not then, and Tromeo and Juliet. They played Tromeo and Juliet at 4 in the afternoon. Normally, nobody goes at that time, and the place was, they had the biggest crowd of people who they had to turn away. The security guy told me he had ever seen. And then Zeffirelli was okay at 6, and the Luhrmann one hardly attracted anybody. So shows you. So eventually, whatever it is, will out.
There were so many moments. I'm a Shakespeare fanatic,
Oh, great.
when
What's your
I saw,
favorite? What's your
my favorite
favorite?
is Hamlet. Hamlet
Oh,
is
well,
I'm a Hamlet
you're
junkie.
you're not alone.
I've been involved in 12 different productions of it. I worked on a film version. The whole I
Oh,
adore
wow.
Hamlet.
Which
Uh,
film version?
it was an independent film where they Shades of Troma. They placed the nunnery scene in a BDSM dungeon, and it
Ah,
became this whole cat and
terrific.
mouse game
Oh,
between
great.
Hamlet and Ophelia. Um,
Terrific.
and I remember watching Tromeo and Juliet, and I was prepared to just say, okay, here's going to be a wait a minute. There were some moments that were as beautiful as Zeffirelli's, that was so perfect in how they were set. And then we go into this wild world of yours again. And I was sitting going, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. There was a production of Hamlet, a film version done in 1979. I can't remember the director's name at the moment, but Helen Mirren was in it, and she played Ophelia and Gertrude. They had identical twins play Hamlet, and again, it was this
Hmm.
perfect thing. It was like you reached into Shakespeare's darkest mind, if you will, and
Wow.
found the real meaning of it. And I saw that in Tromeo and Juliet. I can't wait
Oh,
to
great.
see
Great.
Shakespeare's shitstorm.
Well, hashtag Shakespeare. The
So
hashtag is part of the title. Just
hashtag Shakespeare's shitstorm. Why is hashtag part of the title?
well, one of the main themes of it is this world we live in of canceling and Twitter hate and Twitter bait. That's one of the primary themes. This PC police and people, having their career. Sort of we're back in the blacklisting days. Uh, you know.
Yes,
Uh,
very much so. We call it cancel culture, but it's
yeah, that's it.
it's
Yeah.
just the black code. It's just the blacklisting again.
Regarding Tromeo and Juliet, it took 5 years to write the script. I couldn't get it right, and luckily, I just happened to hire James Gunn as my assistant, and he was coming out of Columbia as a novelist. He had a master's in English, and he wasn't really thinking about making movies, although he's seen every movie. And I gave him what we had and $100, and he figured it out. I couldn't really figure out how to do the balcony speech, and he did it. I went to so many different permutations. I had high school kids come in and read Hamlet in front of me. Then I had some high school kids write, not Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet,
Right.
and then I had another one try to write it in the high school jargon, and that didn't. And just I couldn't get there. And then James Gunn solved it. I mean, genius. His balcony speech is magnificent. It's the best. I still can't stop talking about it.
There are tiny moments where suddenly you'll hear something that you're almost sure is straight out of Shakespeare, and then it flies right into something else,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and it
yeah.
just takes you on that journey.
Thank you for getting it.
I'm getting the same feeling. I saw the trailer for hashtag Shakespeare shitstorm, so I'm hearing that also. I'm hearing the famed lines from Prospero and from The Tempest, and I'm seeing as it goes in there, it looks like it's really high production value, or or,
Well,
or
well,
hypertrauma, if you will.
yes, it's high production value for us, but our movie's highest budget is 500,000. That it didn't even cost that much. It's basically a $50 million movie made for 500,000, about that much. And we filmed a week in Albania. We've got Wales, and it's got period. It's got 80s scenes, and it's incredibly ambitious. And you do see a little bit behind the curtain, a little few rough edges, but our fans love that kind of stuff
Of
anyway.
course.
It's very Brechtian, And I think it's great. Tempest is my favorite movie of Shakespeare, my favorite Shakespearean play, and I always wanted to do it, but I wanted to wait till I understood it a little better. And now that I'm closer to Prospero's age, or actually probably beyond his age, I get it even better. I get it even more about the loss of power and all that kind of stuff, and magic, and it's very trippy. It
You talk
was right
about
up
age
my
in
alley.
a veiled negative, but you're very spry in that preview, and it looks like you're moving a mile an hour in that. You're going pretty
Oh boy.
fast.
Yeah, it was. It was pretty hectic. My wife, who is going to chide me after we're finished, she was one of the producers, and that was an interesting experience. After retiring from the film commissioner position, she she and I worked together. That was first time, and that was she was very good. She was great, very
She
smart, very smart.
she kept you from she kept you from jumping overboard on some of
Yes,
those
indeed,
ship
she did.
scenes.
She kept me from tearing too many new, how shall we say it, assholes. If you see the documentary about Poultrygeist, Night of the Chicken Dead, our anti-fast food film, it's one of the most hilarious documentaries you'll ever see, and it's worth a year of film school for sure. It's called Poultry in Motion: Truth is Stranger Than Chicken. But you can see what I'm really like on the set, and it's maniacal. It's insane. It's sad. It's funny. And you can see how hard it is to make a Troma movie. Troma Now, our platform, has got about 5 feature-length documentaries on how we produce. They're behind-the-scenes documentaries showing exactly how we make the movies, and no, no, no decorating. No, it's the awful truth. You see it totally exposed, and it's really quite fascinating and very funny. And the Poultrygeist one, I think, is the most hilarious and also extremely educational for film students, which
Yeah,
is why we make those.
I'm so glad you said that. There was one scene in the trailer, and I've seen it in so many other of your films. Uh, uh, I'm watching the artists so unbridled in what they're doing, the craziness, the insanity, the connection that they have to the material is really commendable. I'm sure there are directors with budgets 10 times what your best has been, saying, how did he get them to do that? So I'm going to ask the question for them. What is it about a Troma film that allows its actors to go all the way with that? How do you do it? How do you make them say, okay, now you're going to pour green goo on you because the whale is about to shit on you, and now you're going to scream? What happens? How do you get them to do it?
Well, as I say, we've been around for 47 years, so we've accumulated a very active and enthusiastic fan base. So when we announce we're going to make a movie, there's a line around the block. And also, we've discovered so many people like James Gunn and Trey Parker and Matt Stone and Samuel Jackson and I mean, I can go on and on. Oliver Stone's first film. It's amazing how many. Honestly, the Troma 47 years. Nobody gives a shit. The media is totally ignores me. But the point is, look what we've done. I've written 7 books. I've written and directed and produced over 100 movies with Michael Hers, of course, and all these famous people that have come out of our womb. It's insane, and nobody, 30 years go by, New York Times silent. 40 years go by, New York Times silent. 50 years goes by. This is my 50th year. Nothing. Nothing. You're the highest, most mainstream person I've gotten to talk to. So
I
the point,
refuse to believe it.
the thing is, we're very underappreciated, and like Prospero, we have lost any power we had. We're pushed deeper and deeper into the reeds of the underground by the fact that the media has become so consolidated and has become such a club of a small number of these giant companies who either don't have room for us or just don't get us, or are corrupt, one or the other. And I've had to. I have a nice little documentary about YouTube and Amazon Prime, and called from independent filmmakers versus corrupt media cartel. It's about 10 minutes, and it's basically sums up what's going on as far as in how independent artists are being treated. It's very bad. So lucky for us, we have our own, platform, and we do our own Blu-rays and theatrical bookings where we can get them, and we do everything ourselves, like a little micro beer. The Troma Now platform is new, it's about 5 years old, and it's growing, and nobody leaves, nobody quits. So even during the pandemic, in fact, we've grown. It's pretty good.
That's your streaming channel, Troma Now?
Yeah, Troma Now. You go to watch.troma.com, and the first month is free, so you can pretty much see. I mean, my main motivation is just want to show my art, something I think most artists want to do, and I definitely would love to get money, and we have gotten some money in the past, but it's pretty lean pickings these days. So I'm happy to give them all away for a month to let people see them all, and then they can unsubscribe and they can see them all for free.
I could cry. It's easy to hear of a 25-year-old indie artist who says, "I don't care. I'm going to sleep in the street and I'm going to make my movies." And then by 35, they're working for some company somewhere in a suit and tie. The fact that you have done this for nearly 50 years, and the fact that right now, as you're looking at 50 years, you're saying, "I don't care. Don't pay me. Just look at my movies."
Well, I mean, the liberating thing about being pretty much, I mean, it's economic blacklisting, let's put it that way, is I can do anything I want. I know that we're not going to, Netflix isn't going to call, and they're not going to take my call, nor will the other ones. So why not just do what I'm doing? And, it's quite satisfying. I do have to say, Romeo and Juliet, at the end of it, I had vertigo. Just after we wrapped, I had 3 days of genuine vertigo, not with Kim Novak and Jimmy Stewart.
Oh, okay.
I had the real thing.
Oh, wow. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. What?
Yeah, it went 3 days later. It left, but yikes.
Was it the stress of making the movie? Okay.
Well, I directed it. I play Prospero, and I play his sister. So a lot of times I had to direct wearing his sister's clothing and wig and
I saw all those wigs go by in the trailer, and I just thought, okay, I'll watch the movie and then I'll figure it out. But wow, I know the answer to this already, but I'm asking, what's next? What happens now?
Well, I don't know what Lloyd Kaufman, will do. I don't know what I'm going to direct next. I'm looking for a one-of-a-kind script. Can be any genre. Maybe somebody out in Shakespeare land has written something that's original. Again, it doesn't have to be formulaic or money-making. It can be a rom-com. It can be anything. So I'm not sure. I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but I'm producing a couple of movies, one in England by a guy who worked for us on 3 of our movies called Eating Mrs. Campbell. He has a movie, his first movie is on Troma Now, and then Mercedes the Muse, whose films I like a lot, who also has some movies, has 2 of her movies on Troma Now, and she's great. She's almost finished. She had to interrupt shooting. Liam Regan, who's directing and writing Eating Mrs. Campbell, he's pretty much shot it all. Mercedes has got some pickup. No, she's got a crowd scene that will do after COVID's over. But other than that, she's done. And then Heidi Moore has a film on Troma Now, which I like a lot, and she's making Kill Dolly Kill, which is kind of a LBGT musical horror film, a little bit along the lines of Vegas in Space that we made. That was Philip Ford directed it, but it was all, and it's on Troma Now. It's all transvestites. First transvestite in space musical, and hilarious, wonderful.
And of course, who would have it but Troma? Of course.
Well, I think we were the only ones. That's the same with Trey Parker. He came to us first. He and Matt Stone came to us first with Cannibal the Musical, and they thought we were rich, and we said, look, we can't help you finish the movie. Why don't you go to all the deep pockets? The movie is funny as hell.
Oh
My
yeah.
wife and I were roaring at the footage we saw, but nobody in the industry dared. Cannibal the Musical. But if they just look at it, it's hilarious. And I'll tell you, it's better than Book of Mormon, which is also genius. And so we were the first stop on the train, and then they came back, and we scraped some money together to help them finish the movie, and we brought it out, and of course nobody showed up. But over the years, it's been extremely successful, Cannibal the Musical, and they put me in a couple of their movies, and they're very good guys. I've interviewed them a few times. They're in my books, and you can see interviews with them and James Gunn and Stan Lee and John G. Avildsen and all sorts of people on Troma Now, actually, right there.
So it's watch.troma now?
Watch.troma.com. And if you could,
Okay.
if you could put a little notice on your
I will make sure.
Site, that would be wonderful. Really appreciate
I will
it.
make sure it will definitely be on the site, watch.troma.com.
Right.
And I'm
It's
going
called,
there right now.
It's called Troma Now, but it's the future, but now. Watch.troma.com. Thank you. Thanks.
I'm really thrilled to have been able to speak to you. I called you an inspiration at the beginning, and that's from what I read. Now that's tripled. That's 10 times. To hear what you've done, and you're the kind of film warrior that we all need to really learn from, because you're putting your message out there, knowing, okay, big guys, don't pay any attention, but I'm going to keep saying it, and enough people are going to start hearing it, and then wait and see what happens. And I think what you're doing is really brilliant.
Thank you. Everybody who works for us, James Gunn, Eli Roth, they all say, when you get hit by a bus and you're gone, everybody's going to say, oh, Lloyd Kaufman, he was a national treasure. His films, look at them, look at this. He did, look what's in here. The Deadpool guys talk about us a lot. I mean, we have a huge footprint on the artistic countryside. But unfortunately, it's a little known fact. But when people dig in a bit, my archives are out at Oklahoma in the American Heritage Institute. So
very cool.
And there is a guy up at Dartmouth doing a real extensive book. So maybe that'll help. I don't think he'll finish it before I throw off those mortal coils, but it's going to be very detailed, and I think it'll be a really good one.
Oh, something tells me you'll be here a very long time. The energy that you have, a long time.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm premieres at Boston Sci-Fi this weekend. You can go to bostonsci-fi.com, Boston, SCIFI.com, to order tickets, hear panels, and to see this amazing movie and 75 other amazing independent films. This interview will also be part of the Boston Sci-Fi channel on Channel I. To see that, you go to J. Michaels Arts, JayMichaelsArts.com, and you click the link for Channel I, where there's over 100 interviews with independent filmmakers, independent theater artists, as well as actual plays that were recorded, Zoom broadcasts, and so many others, and other independent films. And this one's going to stand out in my mind. I've always been a fan of Troma, always been a fan of you, and I feel like I've just sat with a professor who really taught me something about the world.
Well, I've done make your own damn movie masterclass. I did one at Boston College. What does the moderator teach? Boston College, I think, or Boston University. I did one there. Boston U, yeah. I did a make your own damn movie masterpiece, and I've done them at Oxford. I did 2 days at Oxford. I've done a lot of master classes. So if any colleges are interested, I'm cheap.
Of course you did.
A little pot, and I'm there. Sure. One other thing, I saw the 4 movies of the directors who were on a panel with me, and they're terrific. They're great, and I know that the Boston Sci-Fi Festival is the oldest such festival. And
It's the oldest genre festival in America.
yeah, it's terrific. And I know that I used to go to the Orson Welles when I was at Yale because I had friends at Harvard, and Darren and company are part of a wonderful, true group who love, adore, and worship at the shrine of cinema.
For sure. For
And
sure.
you too, Jay. I can see it. I can hear it. Thank you so
You are
much.
far too kind. Thank
Well,
you very much.
You've
It
made
was a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You've made a sad old man very happy. Very good. You're a very good psychiatrist.
My mother will be thrilled. I finally am a doctor.
Great. All righty. Thank you. I'll toddle along, I guess.